Well, where I'm going to start this conversation is I just wanted to thank you because my dog Willie got sick in 2022. And even though I'd found supplements and other things to get him better, like diet was just the vein of our existence. And I
Hmm.
found Danielle's Instagram. I think you had a viral reel of Casey, your dog who is almost 19, go viral, and I found you. Eventually, I joined your school account because you were talking about why raw isn't always the best for dogs. So that is actually where I want to start us today is one, Danielle, welcome to the podcast. And then two, why is raw always not the best for dogs?
Sure. Well, thank you. I am happy that you found my account. I always get the the statement of, I don't know how I found you, but I did. I'm like, well, I'm happy that you did. So this question comes up a lot. The reason, listen, I understand why people feel that it's best. Okay. I understand that we're told more often than not that raw is like the only way to go because people feel that it's, the closest to what our dogs would eat when they are naturally out in the wild. The point I just want to make, 2026 we're in, right? Well, our dogs have not been foraging for food, in most of them, okay, in decades. They are being born to mamas that are eating kibble. Their gut microbiomes, you know what I mean, are kind of uh, they're off, right? They're not balanced between the kibble feeding, between everything conventional that most dogs are being given. The barrage of vaccines, from when they're super young, flea and tick, that is all going to affect the gut microbiome. So, I'm not necessarily saying it doesn't work for all dogs. I'm just saying most dogs are compromised. When you start off with a compromised gut and you try to feed it raw meat, it takes a lot of work to digest that raw meat. Okay, a lot of work. Now, in particular, listen, I gave my dog, so I rescued her. She was probably about, I don't know, they said 2.5, 3 was a little hard to know, right? 3.5, I got that large scope. Um, she had awful ear infections. Her skin was, super red and itchy. Actually, it was so inflamed at one point it like looked purple. The constant itching, the sneezing, the eye goop, everything that pretty much people come to me for, my dog was going through. And that's, she had been, who knows what her history was. It was awful. So I tried all the best kibbles, right? I did that whole thing, elimination, all that stuff. And finally, this is now many years ago, over 15 years ago, didn't have the knowledge that I do today. So I thought raw, right? This topic's been coming up forever. I put her on a raw diet. I'm going to tell you, it did definitely change and decrease the itching. Okay, definitely decrease like the ear infections and the red belly and all of that. So I thought, great, this is wonderful. I finally found it, right? I finally have my answer. I'm going to go with this. About 7 months down the road, I didn't know it at the time, but I'll describe what she had because a lot of times when I work with clients, they're like, oh my God, that's what my dog's doing. And I never knew what it was. She started drooling. And when I say drooling, I don't mean a little amount of drool. I mean so much drool that I had to follow her around with a bath towel. Okay, not a kitchen towel, a bath towel. It was pouring out in buckets. So I was like, well, hello, this is obviously not normal. Something's wrong. She would then gag. She was licking like the bedding, the floor, the walls, like weird stuff, right? She was throwing up bile. This takes me now down a rabbit hole, right? And I'm like months into it because I'm like, what is going on with my dog? And I learned that she had acid reflux. Where did the acid reflux come from? The raw was way too harsh on her gut. Now, here's the thing that people often get a little upset about, right? Because we think there's only one way of doing things, and I say there's really not. Is that sure? Could could she not have been able to handle it because she already went into it with a disrupted gut? Sorry, my cat Milo likes to join
Oh,
all of my
perfect.
podcasts. Okay, buddy. So could it have affected her? You cannot confirm the camera. A little bit more because her gut microbiome was already affected. Yes. I think, but again, listen, I had a client, this is my data, like I tell you, who came to me. Dog was never vaccinated, never on any flea and tick, nothing, nothing, nothing. Dog as clean as it could be. So it should not have had any issues with raw. She put her dog on a raw diet, same thing. Dog was gagging, the dog was having reflux issues. So do you know what I mean? I just use the feedback that I have from people that, it just doesn't always work. And then there are people that come to me and they're like, listen, the diet's a non-negotiable. My dog's doing fine. Great, great. Not here to argue that. But I'm going to tell you more often than not, the people that come to me, their dogs completely transform when they come off the raw diet. It's just too rich. It's just too hard for them to break down. And it can cause other inflammatory issues. And it just does not, I have personally seen, just does not always work well.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit off air as well, but that's what I had come to Danielle for, because I was so frustrated because I'd got holistic treatments that had got my dog better. I had supplements that I felt like got my dog better, but diet again just felt like the vein of my existence, because yeah, it was what you were saying with Casey, like he improved, but it was like kind of that good to great. He was good, but he wasn't great. And then I joined your school platform in July, I believe, and a week went by and my dog was completely different. 2 weeks went by, he was jumping up on the couch again. Like, I don't think sometimes we always realize, and he'll be 12 in March, so he's not a spring chicken by any means, but he's not Casey's, age either yet. We're gonna get there. And
Yes, exactly.
yeah, but after a week, and I think I had posted this in the school platform actually, his coat was just always rough. And he used to have a really soft coat. And, my vet, who helped me a lot, was like, fish oil, I'm like, I can't get this dog any more like coat supplements or fish oil. And I was at a wedding and my dog was with me, and this was just after a week on the diet you recommend. Somebody was petting him, is like, your dog's coat is so soft. I'm like, no, it's not. This has been the vein of my existence for the past like 2 years. And I sat down and pet him, and I paused for a moment and said to myself, his coat is softer. And that was just after a week. And then, like I said, after 2 weeks, he's a corgi, so he's not very tall. He started jumping on the couch again. They were happy about their meal times, which I'm a foodie. So like that was really exciting for me, that they were excited about their meal times again. And yeah, he was getting the really bad acid reflux as well. Like that went away after, I don't think it was quite, I think it was past the 1 week mark, to the 2 week mark. And then I had added some slippery elm, which I felt really just helped on. So yeah, it was transformative to me after joining your school platform and switching him
Yeah.
over.
Yes, and I appreciate the feedback. It's just it can work that fast, It's when you remove something that's just so irritating to the gut, and when you have gut issues too, like you don't want the body to be spending all day trying to digest, right? That's placing even more stress and pressure, in the gut. So it's like if you're feeding raw meat, that's going to take from the time the dog's eating, breakfast in the morning. I mean, there's no way that's even digested by the time they go to eat, that second meal in the evening. So it's like, the body's just constantly trying to break this stuff down, and then take it a step further. If the body's doing nothing but just trying to digest all day long, when does it have time to do any healing? It just doesn't, you know what I mean? So it's like all those other toxins from all those other things we just mentioned, everything's just staying, it's festering. That also affects the gut over time. So it's funny when you say about the coat though, because it's the one thing over all these years people always said to me. So again, Casey being 19 in May, they joke and they think I give her like these hot oil, like those VO5 treatments. I'm like, this dog, okay, wait for it now, has not had a bath in probably, I don't know, maybe 13 years, could be 14.
Really?
I swear to God, I do not bathe her. I bathed her once when she was super young. She hated it. She does not smell. This is not a dog that, like, she's not foofy, but she's certainly not going to, like, go roll around in a pile of mud. If she came in, whatever, I'll take a little washcloth to her feet, but she never smells. Her skin is always silky smooth. I have never taken her to get groomed. I've never bathed her. It's like, aside from that one time where I did it in my backyard. That was it. She doesn't need it. Her skin doesn't require it. And that's the thing about them. They don't need this too. That's a whole nother thing with the grooming and the over grooming and bringing her dogs in. Like, do you know what I mean? So often these chemicals, that's another probably conversation, but these are the things too that play a role in the health of our pets.
That was something, because my dogs had been, when I was born, he was my mom's dog, but he became my dog. He was
Hmm.
3 when I was born, and he didn't pass away till I was 12. And that was like on all conventional stuff. And he was a lab. So 15, he was considered old. And, but he had the worst farts, like just the worst gas. And, dog, like I have horses. And so like horse poop, I'm never like, horse poop doesn't bother me. It's whatever. But dog poop used to always just make me gag. And yeah, when I had switched their diet, that was like a miraculous thing to me. I'm like, these dogs don't fart anymore. And if they do,
Hmm.
I can't smell them. And their poop I don't smell it at
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like,
funny because I went away with my family like over this trip, and my sister's dog came too. And someone's like,
mm,
"Did your dog fart?" And I'm like, "I know this is a weird statement. My dog doesn't fart." I was like, "So don't blame it on my dog. You
yeah,
can't get away with it, okay?" I was like, "She
no.
doesn't fart, and if she does, then I know something's really wrong." But I swear, I don't know that I've smelled dog fart. I'm not going to probably since the time that she was back on kibble. It has to be because it never happens. You know what I mean? That's a huge point that I don't usually bring up, but it's good that you did. It's like those gastro issues are pretty much gone.
Yeah, I think like what you were talking about with the coat and this stuff, I think it's really
Hmm.
important just to say that these are signals that there's actually something wrong. And we just treat them like they're normal now because it's common, but it's actually not normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what do people do if there's dandruff on the coat? They bring them to the groomers, right? You know what I mean? And now it's like they're just slathered with shampoos and things like that, thinking it's going to fix the problem when it's an internal problem, not an external problem.
Yeah, so looping back to diet. So as of right now, you feed just meat and veggies. How
Mhm.
did you get from raw to figuring out this was the best option for you and Casey?
So it took some time, like I said, to just even figure out what was wrong with her. When I did, I'm not going to say that it was easy. Again, this was a really long time ago, so I did not have the knowledge. The reason I got to this point of having the knowledge is doing probably all the things wrong. I always tell people that you learn, right, from experience. And so it took me some time. It was definitely trial and error. Back then, I didn't know about slippery elm, which is a huge, like, lifesaver when it comes to healing the gut, which you experienced in a short amount of time, which was awesome. But, I was playing around a lot, like, okay, bringing in some of the proteins that I thought with the least amount of fat. I knew that. I knew she's got reflux, like she's got to have a low fat diet. But the diet alone, you know what I mean, when they're in that much turmoil, is just not going to do it by itself. So it took me some time, you know what I mean, and learning and things like that. But yeah, finally I got things to calm. That's where I learned, like, in a gut that's already inflamed, should I have been feeding my dog beef and broccolis and cauliflowers? No, no, not in a gut that's already screaming. So then I learned, okay, I've got to go more low fat. It didn't matter if I was doing a really lean beef. I want to start with like maybe a white cod or, a turkey. And then I don't want cruciferous vegetables. Those are gas producing. They're great, but they're great when the gut can handle it. So a lot of times when people move to home cook, they're like, oh, well, I had a client the other day. She's like, well, I switched my dog to home cook and the dog had diarrhea right away. Okay, what did you switch to? Well, it was like a really high fat kind of beef and like broccoli and spinach. Okay, well, you know what I mean? Those are, yeah, gonna cause some digestive distress in a gut that is just a bit more compromised. You move into those things a little bit more, as the gut heals. So it was really just trial and error. Now, I don't need to do that. I don't have my clients do trial and error because I've learned all this. So that school platform is huge because I just lay it all out, and just teach people how to take it step by step.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we'll link all your school stuff below because it's just an absolute great resource. And on the slippery elm, so I had used slippery elm tinctures, and when I was binging, I feel like I was Netflix binging your school account. When I was binging your school account, you had recommended the powder, and that
Yeah.
was a huge game changer. Talk about trial and error over, because the tincture, I kept hearing how great slippery elm was, and I had seen some success with it, but then when you said the powder and like letting it gel up, and it was crazy how fast the results actually were. Like my dog went from still having a bit of acid reflux after that week to 2 week mark on the home cooked, added the powdered slippery elm, and it was just boom. Like
Hmm.
it was awesome.
Yeah. It's one of those herbs that is so much more powerful in the powder form. Just because, yeah, you want that gelatinous. It's coating, the inside, of the body that's inflamed. It's acting as the mucus, but we don't want mucus, coating the body because then it messes with everything, right? The body needs to be able to communicate, and it can't do that if it's coated in mucus. So it's like that, kind of gelatinous, but when you're using it in the form of the herb, it's going in the body and it's kind of coming out of the body, but it'll take that fire out of the inside, of the system, and it'll calm things down and it'll turn things around real quick for acid reflux, for diarrhea. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And thank you for putting all of that out there, because it's crazy how just one simple shift can make such
Hmm.
a big difference. And on that, I actually want to transition to, one of the themes just kind of weaving in here as we're talking is how simple shifts can make a big difference. And one of the things we were talking about off air is like fear mongering, and how there's like so much fear being put into home cooked, but then and also that you need like five of these things to heal and not just like a slippery elm powder. So can we actually talk about with the fear mongering with an unbalanced diet with home
Sure.
cooking? Yeah.
I mean, I think it all just everything is based around fear mongering today, right? Because if you make people scared enough about something, then it does not promote change, right? It keeps them kind of boxed in, their backs are up against the wall. And, I hate to say it, but someone's always benefiting from that, right? So
Yeah.
who's the person that benefits from, sometimes our pets being sick, right? There's a lot of, or ourselves being sick. These are businesses, right? This is how they make their money. So if you make people fearful, then they're not going to do the things that they can do that would keep themselves or their pets from needing that service, right? So that kind of sums it up right there. But it's so unfortunate, that when people come to me, I was saying to you a little bit before that, there are veterinarians that will tell them if you put your, dog on or your cat on a home cooked diet, they've used the words like, your animal could pass away. You can really harm them. And it's like, okay, so your comparison of putting a dog on a real diet and saying that it's better to put them on a hill science diet, things that are loaded with seed oils, preservatives, just synthetic vitamins, is going to be more balanced. Wrong. It couldn't be further from the truth. But that scares people. So, okay, if a vet says, right, that statement, that's going to scare people. That's not going to make them want to do a home cooked diet. And it could and is so simple. And then I'm going to tell you, right, in my platform, it's the number one thing I have to repeat over and over again to people. Because even though they know that kibble's not good and they move to the home cooked, they're
Mm.
still kind of in their mind, but wait a minute, what you're doing is too simple. Where are the organ meats? Where are the fish oils? Where are the this? Where are the that? And they're going through the stack of things where I'm like, nope, 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 nope. You know what I mean? You're kind of being brainwashed with all this stuff. And because again, if people are overwhelmed, and they are, think about everybody's day to day. For me to try to, even say to people, you got to try to cook for your pets, they're like, wait, what? I've got to now add something else to my day, and it's got a stack of 15 different things that have to go in it. Who's signing up for that when you can just rip open a bag of kibble, and throw it in the bowl? No one. But I literally takes me probably 15 minutes twice a week to cook for 4 animals. That is it. Meat, pureed veggies, a dog that's almost 19 and walks miles a day. She is not deficient in any nutrients. Do I give some light supplementation? Yeah. Do I give her 20 different things? I love my people out there that are trying, but holy Lord, people are doing too much, because then you have this industry on the other end, the super crunchy, too crunchy, I feel like, industry that is pushing people to do nothing but supplementation. And it's making people and it's making dogs super, super sick. Their bodies are getting so overstimulated by all of this stuff. Meat, veggies, I lean on maybe two different supplements for a dog, my dog in particular, who's almost 19. She does not get more than that.
Do you stick so you also introduced me to Epigenius, which is
Mhm.
I'm just in love with that supplement. Do you keep her on that and then another supplement, or is that pretty
I
much the
do.
only? Yeah.
I do the Epigenius. The reason why I don't always, the reason why I don't always openly promote it, right? Like,
Mm,
listen, I am someone who probably only has two companies that I really like stand by that I use. I've probably had 250 companies, you know what I mean, come to me and say, can you promote this? The answer's always been no. Like, I don't
mm,
care how you could hand me $10,000. I'm not going to promote anything that has garbage in it. And most of the stuff, unfortunately, is garbage. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I like these products because I can trust the companies. But the reason why I won't always just openly recommend a supplement is because not every dog is ready to jump into a supplement. That's where I
Mm,
stop, because people aren't coming to me with healthy pets for the most part. I can
mm,
count on two hands, and I speak to thousands and thousands of people, over the course of a month. They're not coming to me with healthy pets. So for me to just say, hey, go get this supplement and put your dog or your cat on it, I'd be doing a disservice. And that's like not what I'm here to do. And I'll take it a step further. I have an affiliation with this company. I could probably be making thousands of dollars by just doing a simple post on a video that goes viral and saying, hey, my dog's almost 19. Guess what kept her alive all these years? And put the powder in there. I don't do it because it's not true. It's not
mm,
true. That's not the thing that's kept her alive all these years. You know what I mean? It's what I haven't put in her body, the vaccines, the flea and tick, the kibble. I've done a lot of things to keep her alive. The Epigenius I do love, but it can be overstimulating for a dog that's not ready for it. So when I work with
mm,
people, it's always the diet first, doing some light detoxing, if depending on the dog's needs, and then the supplementation. So
mm,
that's kind of the difference. Do I love the product? Yes. But it's something that I try to work through with people just to also explain and make them hear. You don't want to just jump into supplementation without some, I would say, direction. But when you get to that point, yes, Epigenius and the medicinal mushroom tincture is what I use for the anti-inflammatory
mm,
piece of things. I absolutely love. The Epigenius is loaded with minerals, so that's how I kind of balance out a very simple diet. And then it has the chlorella, so that's going to pull the heavy metals out of the body, and it has biomedic, which is going to pull glyphosate out of the body. So that's why I
mm,
feel like those two are like a super powerhouse.
mm. Yeah, no, I absolutely love the Epigenius. What are you, and thank you for sharing that because that was really powerful. What are you looking for in the dog to know that they're ready for supplementation? Like, are you looking at digestion, energy levels, stuff like that?
That's a good question, because this comes up again. If I showed you the amount of messages I get, like, what can my dog take? And I'm like, no, that's not it. So yeah,
Oh,
the digestion, I mean, is probably, I would say 95% of the clients that come to me, and you probably saw it, on the platform, their dogs again, or cats, have major, usually skin issues and digestion issues. Okay. And if you go to start a supplement without doing the foundational work, even though it's a great supplement, right? You've seen great, changes, with your dog with that supplement. But if you go to, sorry, he just can't help himself.
oh, you're good.
If you go to supplement and something is a little, even mushrooms, they can be just a little overstimulating. And it's being used at the wrong time without doing the foundational work. Sometimes I found that, yeah, you can cause some diarrhea, or, you can
Mm,
cause whatever that issue that's going on if your, dog is super itchy. That could be something that can intensify that particular issue, that they're having. So yeah, that's why it's just like I'd like to go slow with that. Also, I'm gonna be honest, it's a waste because if your dog is that, or cat again, is that inflamed, and you're just going to throw a supplement at the body, for the most part, the body's not absorbing it, just like anything else. So you have expensive urine. You're putting this, supplement in, and your dog and your cat is just urinating that out.
Yeah, that's something that's been really powerful for me to learn. Like, it's actually not about what we digest, it's what we can absorb. And even
Mm-hmm.
when you were talking about just the over supplementation, I had experienced that because my hormones, it's a long story, but the short version of the story, I was like a heavy CrossFitter. We did a ton of macro counting. But then I was working a very physical job at the time, and my body had gone into starvation mode. And then from that, my hormones got super whacked. And I was on, I think, 10 different supplements at some point. And
Yep.
I'm like, I don't think one, I'm absorbing this because my gut's out of whack. And then two, I didn't stick with it because it was like a part-time job just trying to,
Oh
like
yeah.
get all of these supplements in. But yeah, I felt like I had really expensive urine because I'm like my gut is just kind of sending everything in one
Yeah.
and out the other. So thank you for sharing that because it's just a really powerful insight.
Well, I had a similar background. I was really, yeah, I won't even get into my history just because it's so long. But in a nutshell, I was insanely sick for a really long time, a really long time. And by the time I got to the point of, working with a functional doctor, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I was on twice as many supplements. I probably was on about 25 different supplements by the time he got done with me. And I was the sickest I had ever been in my life. Like I thought I finally found this functional doctor, right? I'm going to basically I sign away my entire bank account to this man because it was so expensive, and it just was test after test and supplement after supplement. And I finally said, like, what is going on here? How do you even know what works? How do you know what this is even doing? I've got a bucket of supplements literally at home, and I'm the sickest I've ever been. So that's where I started to learn about all of this. And I was like, a lot of that is even a business, because well, he made a lot of money from me and he did not help me at all. Simplicity was the key. It took me a really long time to learn that.
I love that. Yeah, and it's funny as we're talking about the simplicity, I went through like a personal development era as well. And all the personal development people do always preach complexity is the enemy of execution. I think that's a
Mhm.
Tony Robbins thing. But yet when it comes to like diet and lifestyle, we make things so complicated, but then we wonder why we don't stick with it. And it's like, well, it's a full-time job. And even like you said with the simple diet I learned from you in school, like honestly, I put everything in the crock pot on low for a couple of hours. I go in and I mash it up and then I have food for the week. Like it doesn't, I don't even know if it takes me since I put it in the crock pot. I think it maybe takes me 5-10 minutes to
Mhm.
prep everything, mash it together, and then I literally scoop it. I have a scale to weigh it out to the proportions and then it's,
That's
and
it.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's how simple it could be, and that it's just like you said, and I'll say it one more time, but it's the hardest thing for me to even get people that are coming to me, you know what I mean, for my help. Like they're still just like, wait, what? Or like, why don't I see recipes on your platform? Like, because I don't, there's no recipe here. It's meat and veggies, but it takes, you know what I mean? It takes that we're brainwashed, you know what I mean? We've been brainwashed for so long. So it takes that like deprogramming, to be like, no, listen, it is just that simple. And it can be that simple and it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Yeah. So you would say the biggest question would be like recipe stuff, and then are the biggest issues you see is the gut and the
Mhm.
itchiness with your clients?
Yeah, yeah. Itchiness is bad. The skin issues are horrible. Bigger issues I'm definitely starting to see come up, which, is sad, but stuff people need to be aware of. Seizures, they're becoming, you know what I mean? They're creeping up on the number of calls that I get. A lot of neurological issues, which these bodies are overloaded. Plus, we're using these neurological flea and tick medications, these damaging medications on our pets, but those also can cause the skin issues. But yeah, it's a lot of yeast, skin, ear issues because the toxins are trying to push out. That's kind of the way that they try to escape out of the body.
So it's the body being overwhelmed, and this is the body's way of trying to detox it, essentially.
Essentially, and you don't want things pushing out through the skin, right? Because it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. So it's like, where should these things push out of? They should push out of the liver and the lymph, and they don't, because, when you give an animal anywhere from 5 to 10 vaccines in the first, sometimes 8 weeks of their life. I was just on with a client today, and I was like, she's like, well, I haven't vaccinated my dog any further. And that's not my decision to make for people. But I said, okay. And I said, well, when's the last time, your dog received anything? It's a younger dog. She's like, well, at 8 weeks. I said, well, how many, did they receive? 5. So in 8 weeks, who knows? All 5 could have been at the same visit, because a lot of times now they have now 10 in one puppy shots. 10 in one. So at one visit, you get 10 vaccines, and you give that to a puppy. You know what I mean? Why is the question. Why is that happening? And that's going to destroy the immune system of that, dog, cat, puppy, kitten for just the rest of their lives, if you don't know what you're doing to be able to fix it.
And I'm actually not very well educated on the vaccines, so I don't know if you know if this is true or not. Do they give the same dose too, regardless of if the dog is, that is true?
Oh yeah, because I'll have clients say to their vets, like, can you please change the dosing? And they'll say, oh, that's not something we do. Now, there are some that do, some of the holistic vets will sometimes change the dosing, or a vet that just is an actual vet. You know what I mean? That has the knowledge and understanding, like, of what they're doing, you know what I mean? And not being told what to do, they will change it. Some people will say, oh, my vet's good. This is a conventional vet. He will not give the full dose. He knows better. But, oh, yeah, they give the same dose. So that's why your smaller dogs tend to have a lot more of the neurological issues, heart issues, because they're being, you know what I mean? You've got 10-pound little dogs, or a 10-pound cat, that's being blasted with the same dose as a 150-pound dog. How does it make sense to anybody? And I had a client who the other day told me that her vet actually said, okay, wait for this, because I was like, I don't know where he learned that, sorry, but the vet actually, does cats ever, I have 3 cats.
I didn't know you had 3. I thought you had 2.
No, I have 3. It's like, when people say, like, anytime I get on the phone, my kids start to talk to me. When I get on a live or the cats are everywhere. It's like, they know. Anyway. And
They got to be involved.
They know.
Yeah.
But I have people say, now I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you had a client come in the other day and told you a vet said, and we were talking about, yeah.
Yes, that the smaller animals will metabolize the vaccine faster because they're smaller. Okay.
What part of his butt did he pull that out?
I have no, yeah.
Okay.
So that's why they gave the dog, her like little 12-pound dog, the same dose when she asked. I said, okay.
And how is the dog, or do we?
That's when they come to me. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's the skin issues. It's the, the neurological issue. I mean, her dog's okay. We're working on things, but the stories I hear, it is hard. You know what I mean? It's hard. People's animals are suffering, and the stories usually get worse and worse. And listen, I don't necessarily want to focus on that, you know what I mean? Because I want people to know that you can avoid all of this, but what's not being talked about and really shared is how awful, you know what I mean? The health of our pets really is. It's awful. And think about people that don't even have the opportunity, to be educated on this. And think about people also, and it's not a judgment, but by financially, you know what I mean, don't have the means to do any of this. So yeah, they're probably, some people are, I mean, I was in the dollar store, I think over the Christmas break, just trying to get tape, going there for just cheap stuff, obviously, because everything there is pretty toxic, and people are buying cat food. Yeah, and listen, right, I'm not judging, right? This is where people are financially in the world. But imagine the toxicity, you know what I mean? That is in that cat food. But this is what we're left with sometimes. And it's hard, because it's whether you're buying cat food from Delta or not, it's all the same toxic, junk.
Well, I think what's important to highlight though is a lot of people in these situations are trying to do everything right though, right? Like they're
Hmm.
going into the vet, like they're doing everything they're being told to do to have a healthy pet. They're going in for their annual checkup. They're getting, I don't even know what the vaccine schedule is now, the 6 months,
Yeah,
the yearly, whatever. And then they're left with this pet that now has to get on 20 medications just to make the skin
right.
stop itching.
Yeah, yeah, it's sad. I mean, I've had so many people come to me and it's like, their dog is they've spent, 10, 15, $20,000 skin issues and haven't been able to resolve that, and it's just by slowing things down and changing the diet. But people are trying, but then again, there's the side of like this is a whole another conversation. You know what I mean? People that can't afford to do, and I get it, but those are the dogs that are dumped off at shelters or the side of the road, or we have a problem. We have a big, big problem that's not necessarily being addressed, and it's if we can start small, that's my goal is to educate people on how easy it can be, because then guess what? It's cheap and it's affordable. You know what I mean? I have a $7 homeopathic that can keep my dog from, having diarrhea or fixes acid reflux or skin issues or warts or you name it. There's a homeopathic. These things cost $7, not, hundreds and hundreds of dollars from, the vet's office.
Yeah. What would you say? So, um, do you tend with these issues? Is it pretty much a similar protocol? Because I know we were talking about this off camera a little bit. Like, there's so much fear mongering, and this is a completely separate issue. This is a completely separate issue, but actually, it all starts in the same place. So, are you pretty like, regardless of if it's a neurological issue or a skin issue or gut issue, are all your clients pretty much starting in the same place as far as the
Yes,
solution?
absolutely. Absolutely. Got to start with the gut. You have to start with the gut. You've got almost 75% of the immune system is there. Even if someone comes to me and the dog has cancer, got to start with the gut. We talked about that a little bit. Yeah, the health issues are extreme and are just all different ends, of the spectrum. But you have to start with the gut. It runs the body. And most of, I feel like that conversation doesn't often happen, or if it does happen, it's not pushed as one of the most important pieces. And I feel like it definitely is. You have to have stability there, because you can't also detox a dog that doesn't have a stabilized gut. You're going to make them sicker, or the skin issues get worse, or you know what I mean? They feel cruddy. And it's like, I'm not someone who puts my foot on the gas pedal. You know what I mean? If a dog or cat is kind of expressing, hey, I can't handle this. This is too much or it's too fast. Some people say, oh, you got to just go through it. It's detox. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't play around with that. I think you have to slow things down. You have to listen to the body. But that's why I don't do everything all at once. I do things in stages, and I always start with the gut. Then I work with opening the pathways, and then it's boosting the immune system. So that could look different, just in terms of what I use, how I use it for different dogs. But generally, it kind of looks the same. There are different variations though. Dogs that have major, major yeast issues or like that, you know what I mean? Some of those look a bit different. But for general purposes, it's not that hard, if you follow a little bit of kind of like that three-step process.
Yeah, I love that because what I really want to encourage people is back to the simple. I feel like that's the theme of our
Hmm.
conversation is simplicity, but that we have all of these different labels, but they're actually stemming from the same problem. And
Yeah.
uh, I think one of the best ways I've heard it put is we think we have 10 different problems, but we actually have one or two problems with 10 different side effects, and
Hmm.
but it is the fear that keeps us, I think, over supplementing and over because we think we need to have a supplement for every single symptom.
Correct. Well, you can think about it like this, right? We're one person living in one body, and there's like 45 different doctors out there. How, you know what I, how does it make
Oh my
sense?
gosh. I've never thought about that. That is so
Well, because
true.
I feel like I've seen all of them. When I was sick,
That
I'm
is
going to,
so
I mean, at least
true.
10 plus different doctors, not one of them, okay, Not one of them ever had a conversation with each other. So it's like, you know what I mean? You're
So
treating me with this,
true.
you're treating me with that. My body's breaking down. Not one person is like, oh, well, let me see you try to do my health history. They're like, oh Lord, with this one. No one cared, you know? So it's like, and what was the problem? The problem, my body was so overloaded with toxins, my gut was destroyed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So what did I fix? I fixed my gut. About 15 of my symptoms out of the 30 went away. But then when I
Mm-hmm.
had stability in the gut, that's when I slowly learned how to then move further, do some of that deeper detoxing. Could I have done that detoxing when I could barely eat, you know, without being in pain or bloated or being sick? No. There's no way I could have went to step 2 and 3 without doing step 1. I would have never survived it, you know? So that's
Mm.
kind of the point is just it's so much easier than people realize. You literally just need the education. I spell it out. I keep it easy. I educate like this, super simple. I use the same, you know, kind of language, the same examples. So it's something that really just like people will remember because that's how easy it is.
I love that. Yeah. I really just thank you for sharing your story too, because I love just remembering, because I think we're also just in an instant gratification in our culture. Like we want things right away, but we
Hmm.
can detox too fast, and that can cause more problems instead of actually, like with the visual I was getting when you were talking is like we're actually slowing down to speed up so that
Yeah,
we're not putting the animal or even ourselves in a greater crisis, essentially.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's step by step. That's it, you know, so that's how I approach all of it.
I love that. Perfect. Um, I'm. I want to talk about how, because I've seen a lot of comments on your socials about how lucky you are to have a dog. And we've kind of
Hmm.
touched on that, but like how lucky you are to have a dog that is almost 19.
Hmm. Wow.
When in
I'm so
reality,
sorry.
oh, you're good. No, you're totally good. When in reality, that was how I got started. Actually, was I think his name is Dr. Gary Richter, was on a
Got it.
biohacking podcast that I had listened to, and that's what helped me. And he said that the average age for dogs used to be 20, meaning some dogs were
Hmm.
actually living older than 20. And that, like, after I got through, because, like, to be honest with you, I was really pissed off when I first heard that, because I'm like, what do you mean I could have had more time with my other dogs, you know? And then once I got over the mad, I was like, okay, now I can help my dog now live to be that old. So I would love to actually to have you talk about like dogs should be as old as Casey.
They should be. Yeah, and they're really a lot of the information I'm seeing is the average age of dogs right now is about 8, you know, 8 to 10. So when people come to me, yeah, and they tell me they have a senior dog, and I'm expecting them to, you know, okay, right, they're 15 or whatever, you know, 12, 13, 14, 15, and they're like, oh no, my dog's 8. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, who labeled your dog a senior dog? Oh, my vet did. And that had me like years ago starting to look into like each year, you know, like how long are our dogs living to? The average age is 8 years old. So it's really sad, you know, and I'll get a lot of the like, I just had a comment the other day where someone's like, oh, well, your dog, you know, she's a mixed breed and, you know, she's a beagle and, you know, they tend to live, you know, longer lives. Listen, I'm not, you know what I mean, saying that the breed of the dog has nothing to do with it, especially a lot of these dogs that are crossbred and just all the craziness that's going on with breeding, okay, today. But I was
For
kind
sure.
of like, really though? So it has nothing to do with the fact of what I've been feeding this dog, you know what I mean? All the stuff that I avoid putting in her body. Like, listen, you can have a closed off mind that just doesn't want to accept, you know, that there's a better and healthier way of doing something. More power to you. Okay, you know what I mean? You want to keep living the way you're living. You want to do the kibble and the vaccines and all this stuff. You know, I guess you can see where it goes, but there's no way, you know, that you can tell me that I could have kept vaccinating my dog, putting her on kibble, the way that she was so sick at when I first got her, that she'd be here today at almost 19 walking miles a day. Like, it's just very silly, you know, but regardless, listen, this is why I started doing what I was doing. Because when I heard those numbers, I was like, you know what? I am angry. I am sad. I can't imagine just having had my dog, if I got her at 3, that 4, 5 years from then, you know what I mean? I would have been saying goodbye to her. At 16 years of me having her, if she happens to pass, to me, that's even still quick. But I will have had, you know what I mean? At this point now, I'm thinking she's going to go for another couple of years. But if she does, right, that means I had my dog could be for 17, 18, 19 years. Uh, that's that's a significant amount of time, and that's what we should all be able to experience. And to be burying people's pets at 3, 4, 5, and 8 be the roof, I will not accept it. I think that's horrible.
I didn't know it had gone down to 8. I thought they were still saying the 10 to 12 range, which now being in what I'm in now, 10 seems young. I didn't know it had dropped down
Hmm.
to 8.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
That is
bad. Well,
insane.
over the past couple years, they also added the COVID, vaccine to the puppy shot. So again, you start blasting dogs over these last,
What?
yeah, yes, they did.
Are they giving
Yes, they did.
mRNA vaccines to dogs?
Yes, yes. So this is a problem, this is a problem. And you're gonna try to, yeah,
Sorry. What?
yeah.
Are they convincing people dogs get COVID?
You can convince people of pretty much anything. You know what I mean? I've had people tell me they've gotten their dogs a COVID shot. And again, when these things first came my way, I thought it was you know what I mean? And not that I think it was a joke to be rude, but I was kind of like, I'm, I'm
I,
sorry,
I
what?
I would have said
Yeah,
a
you know what I
cosmic joke.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're getting all sorts of shots, all sorts of shots. So again, again, a 10 in 1, when someone sent that to me, I was like, oh my God, our animals don't stand a chance. If this is how they're going to, you know what I mean, right out the gate, this is what their bodies are going to be treated with. They just don't stand a chance. But this is why they are so sick. Like, who hears about this? Who really hears about how sick, most people's animals are? No one's really talking about it, or people were just so conditioned. Okay, my animal's sick. Let me just bring him to the vet. But it's just, and sick, going back to what you said before, like, not everybody thinks of the way I see sick, right, may be different from what somebody else sees. Like when I see digestive issues and the skin issues and the ear infections, like when I talk to people one on one, they're like, oh, my dog's healthy. But, right, they have the constant ear infection, they're itching nonstop, they're this or that, and they have the lumps and bumps, but they're healthy. So they think because they don't have, I know kids, because they don't have a major issue, cancer, diabetes, right? Like these bigger health issues, my dog's healthy. I'm like, but you're ignoring those little signs that are eventually, unfortunately, going to probably lead up to something bigger. And that is happening to most of our pets. That's how it starts. It starts little, but that's not a healthy dog dealing with any of these, issues. And it eventually does spill over, and you wake up one day, you know what I mean? And that little issue that you thought, I get constantly, like, I don't know how this happened. It happened overnight. It didn't happen overnight. The little things happened overnight, but we ignored them. And now it turns into a bigger issue.
That was a big awakening for me. I think when I was 20, I started going to an acupuncturist for some things. And, I guess that'd be Eastern medicine. Eastern medicine. Sometimes my dyslexia just whoops. I'm like, wait, let me
Which
autocorrect
one?
that. Yeah, which one? And she was saying like she had a client with colon cancer, and the client had only started going to acupuncture because of the colon cancer. And if you get a good acupuncturist, they will go through everything. They ask you what you're eating. They ask you about your
Hmm.
stress. Like you spend a half hour just talking about your life outside of acupuncture. And she said, this lady told me she had digestive issues her whole life. And so the doctors and everyone were so surprised when she got colon cancer. And she looked at the lady and she's like, to be blunt, I'm not surprised because your body's been screaming at you for 40 years and you just weren't. And so thank you so much for just bringing awareness to that, because the dogs are telling us so much sooner than what we're catching it. Because yeah, we're taught that it's just like normal for their guts to be like, even for my dog, I thought it was just normal for him to when he was on kibble, I'd have free food like just out for him and he'd go eat whenever. And looking back now, I didn't realize like how inflamed his gut was because of how little he was actually eating. And
Hmm.
so even back then, it's like, oh, I did have these signals, but I just didn't know to look for them because we're taught it's quote unquote normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all this is about. None of this is none of it, comes from a judgmental point of view. None of it comes from like, oh, this is the only way to do everything, anything. It's really not. It's education. The more education you have on these topics, it's like it just makes you more, this we talked about before we came on. The confidence is key. Right? If you're confident about what you're doing, then
Mm,
you don't need to rely on these systems that are really meant to keep our dogs, keep our cats, keep us sick, keep us on that hamster wheel. You can avoid any of these, larger illnesses just by doing some of these preventative things, and they are extremely simple. That's it.
yeah, yeah. I love that. So before we transition into some Q&A, do you have anything you want to finish up with or
No, I mean, I think that's again, like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's literally simplicity. I can say that, and I do over and over and over again. If you are ever confused about anything, you have to just think, go back to basics. Don't overstack things, don't overcomplicate things, like as simple as it needs to be. Get your animal fed. Fruit, excuse me, food, is going to be the key. So just some of the protein, the pureed veggies, even if you just started with that and a slippery elm, and that's it, that's all you need. There's some obviously variations of things that you can eat along the way, but like that's just a really good starting point. For so many animals, that alone would make a huge change. I know it would.
yeah. Do you primarily use the slippery elm for digestive support or will you use a probiotic or a prebiotic?
I don't. I find them to be pretty gimmicky. Yeah, I lean on the slippery elm.
I do too. I was just curious your take on it because I've
Yeah.
never seen. The only results I've kind of seen, my dog got, I think it's called bilious something. Like he was throwing up bile just all the
Hmm.
time right after the
Hmm.
antibiotics. And a little bit of ox bile at the time was like super, super helpful. But other than that, I have never seen with myself or my animals like amazing results with
No.
probiotics or
No, and
prebiotics.
I've purchased some of the most expensive probiotics. They never did anything for me. I don't know. I mean also too, you can't fix, right? That has to be in conjunction of sure, with your diet aligning and things like that. But even when I was on a good diet, I never really found the probiotics did anything.
I haven't either. So thank you for because I've
Yeah,
always wanted to talk to somebody about that because
sure.
it's such a big thing and I'm like, am I
Mhm.
missing something? Because I've
No,
just not. Okay, cool. Awesome.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
perfect. So I had a few Q&As from the Instagram and the first question I had was, do you recommend any vaccines or are you at the point where you're non-vaccine at all?
I mean, I do leave that up to, listen, I'm not here to tell people what to do when it comes to that, right? That's your own personal preference. But uh do I, think any of them are protecting our pets? No, and it's just not something that I adhere to, but to each their own. That has to be something that people make their decision, based on their own education on the topic. But no, I don't find that any would be benefiting the body.
On the things that we're like taught to be, I'm thinking of parvo's kind of like the big thing. Is it just that there's solutions to that and we actually don't need a vaccine or
Yeah, I mean, there's just most of the dogs that get these vaccines anyway. They're getting these illnesses. You know what I mean? Because their immune system is broken down. It's now open, to all of these different diseases. I mean, again, my dog has not received anything in well over 15 years. She goes to the local lake and the beaches, and she's drinking puddles, and I don't know, rivers. I've traveled with her everywhere. If that was the case, then she should be dead. Yeah, I mean, bluntly, there's no other way I can say it. She
yeah.
should be dead. But no, I support her gut. I parasite cleanse, a few times throughout the year. If I thought she got into something bad, I was telling my client today, like, she had the same concerns. I'm like, last year I took my dog to one of my local beaches, and then the next day it was like shut down because it was some crazy bacterial load that was through the roof.
Mm.
I was like, oh, great. My dog didn't have diarrhea. She had nothing. All right, okay, a couple days. I gave her like an anti-parasitic, you know what I mean? Just to kind of like just be a little preventative, but she was fine. She
Hmm.
was fine. So I don't worry about any of that stuff. That's my approach.
No, thank you for sharing because, we haven't had so since we've had puppies, we've vaccinated because our youngest dog is 10, I think. No, my sister
Mm.
has a younger dog. But I was just curious if you do if you would do puppy vaccines just personally.
I wouldn't personally. I mean,
Hmm.
all my, animals are rescues, so unfortunately they
Mm.
come to me, with all that stuff. But if I had the choice, no, I definitely wouldn't.
Oh, right, because they'll get vaccinated when they get to the
Oh yeah.
shelter. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They tend to get a lot more. Sometimes they get double and triple if they're sent to, you know what I mean? Different
Mm.
rescues, fosters. That's a whole nother mess.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do that
Yeah.
on round two. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We'll do
exactly.
that on round two. Okay. The second question was about the recipe, which we talked about.
Yep.
The third question, which we touched on, but it was what you do for itchy dogs.
hmm hmm I mean that's it's not an easy, just kind of like a blanket statement. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said before, just the foundational work. So I don't know if you can hear my cats in the background. Sorry, they're
They're
crying for
fine.
a treat like a bunch of lunatics. So the it's the foundational. It's definitely the gut. It's calming things down. Then I definitely work on opening the pathways. So doing like that liver, lymphatic work, and then it's at that point, definitely boosting the immune system. So again, can something like an epigeneus work? I'm a little careful. I don't just like blanket
Mm.
recommend supplements because I just don't know at that point what that animal needs. But that foundational work for sure definitely has to happen to calm things down, to reset the body.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love how, just on a side note, if you have to follow Danielle on Instagram, but your animals are also bossy. And I just love, I don't know I don't know if you love
They're
it, but I
Oh, they're
love,
insane. I mean, they are funny, but like they're insane. Like if I open a
yeah.
cabinet, they're in the cabinet, they're in the fridge. This one's yelling for dinner. That one, they're a lot. They are. They are comical though. I will tell you that much. It's
Your,
comical.
your videos of Casey barking at you for dinner are my favorite because it's like, yeah, this dog's 18 and a half and she's still just telling her mom what to do.
Oh yeah, she
Yeah.
doesn't let me forget what time it is, and the time change has her all messed up because she barks at like 3:43. I'm like, Case, it's not even a clue to find.
It's not even.
You're all confuzzled.
Right. I love it. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So the fourth question, I didn't ask for context, so I don't know if you'll know what this means,
Okay.
but it's feeding legumes with taurine absorption. Was
So feeding beans and the taurine absorption. Um, I wouldn't be feeding beans in general. Um, I just don't find a need. I don't know if that's for a dog or a cat, but I definitely do not feed beans. Taurine is like definitely a mineral that cats need supplemented into their food just because they don't make their own taurine where dogs do and taurine is found in meat, but because home cooking, right, and kind of cooking it down, it does decrease the amount of taurine that's found in it. So cats definitely need to be supplemented with that. But yeah, I don't know exactly the connection between the beans and the absorption of it. I just personally don't find a place for beans at all. For cats, dogs, I would not be feeding that.
yeah, okay. Because I didn't know if people were feeding legumes for taurine and that's what she meant, or
Maybe, I don't know if there's taurine in beans. I'm not sure, but I
I'm
would
not
just
sure.
supplement the taurine powder, would not be feeding beans. Yeah.
But no, okay, okay,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any question? I don't know if we're on 4 or 5 now. Do you have any recommendations for a dog with an enlarged heart that's having a? She said they're calling them seizures, but the dog's just like passing out when it gets too excited.
So for stuff like that, I definitely I don't make recommendations for things like that without
Mm.
doing like a one-on-one with people because I am very uh thorough, and listen, I'm not a doctor, right? So I'm not providing any medical information. That I'll say that first and foremost,
Yeah.
but when it, just comes to stuff like that, usually you want to figure out what is the reason behind the inflammation, right? So is it a dog that's
Mm.
received a ton of vaccines and again has the conventional flea and tip? What diet are they on? Like, what does their history in life look like up to this point that's causing the systems of the body to break down? And that's not an easy, hey, just take this, right? Or just do this. Like, that's definitely a step by step, kind of conversation. So for those bigger things and things that can lead to like some neurological just kind of like disruptions. Yeah, that's stuff I always tell people like we should definitely get on the phone so we can look at the pattern because you just don't want to do anything. You also want to go super slow. That's not a dog I would have just jump into a detox like at all. That to me can be a little dangerous, So you really need to know that history of that animal to be able to even make any type of recommendations.
And that is something you would still look at the inflammation with that
Oh
as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
100%.
I'll text or I'll message you on Instagram for the direct link, but I'll pop your direct like consultation link in the show notes. And so if she wants to book a one-on-one with you, she can.
Awesome. Thank you. I
Perfect.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. Because, and even for me, like I said, I got my start with my dog, but then some of these other things I still have like a ton of fear around because
Hmm.
it's an enlarged heart, and even just the language around, and I even, still need the reminder of like always going back to the basics, like always going back to the foundation. Because if you have that inflammation, it's going to be creating havoc regardless of where the havoc is.
Correct. The dog didn't wake up with an enlarged heart.
No, no,
Do you know what I mean?
no,
There are
secret.
some things, right, that these dogs may be born,
Yeah.
with some of these, from the start, right? Some of these things popped up. But like for a dog that's always been fine, right, it didn't wake up with that enlarged heart. So what caused it? Well, yeah, pretty
I
much
don't
all the
know.
things we just said.
All the way talk. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but they found a secretariat. Did you ever watch that movie or know about the horse?
No.
He
I
won.
know the name of it, but never saw it.
Yeah, he won the Triple Crown. It's like a big thing in the racing industry, but he had won by, and I don't know the exact numbers, like so many, the largest lengths between him and second place. Like it was a crazy amount, and Disney made a movie about it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but he was, when they did an autopsy on him, his heart was 3 times the size of a regular horse heart. And so it's like, unless you're
Oh my
Secretariat and you're
God.
born with a big heart, then yeah, no, you've got a problem.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You got it right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have a problem. But
Yeah.
this is what's coming up a lot. It's a lot of this stuff, that's becoming issues for our pets. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Okay, the last question I got was actually about what do you do to clean your dog's teeth?
So, well, this is something I wish I would have really taken on a lot sooner. I will be honest with that. I would say that to people, but there are like non-anesthesia, like deeper, cleanings that can be done because if you are past the point where it's just being able to like brush their teeth on their own, which you do have to keep up with, you have to like or you can buy some of those. There's non-toxic like chews, that like actually kind of like almost look like a toothbrush, that they'll chew on, not the ones, not the greenies, none of that stuff. But I know there's a company that reached out to me and they made like a non-toxic chew. I can always put their link in. Raw meaty
Okay.
bones, are kind of like the, nature's toothbrush. But then you have to just be careful. Dogs with certain gut issues, need to be careful with that a little bit. But yeah, I'd be staying on top of that, like from the beginning. That is one thing that I got
Okay.
into way too late, and once that plaque starts to kind of harden, you can't get that off. You really can. I mean, maybe, but then you have to put them under anesthesia, you know what I mean? And that to me is so not worth it. So I'd be either staying on top of brushing from the beginning, the raw meaty bones, even like things like ducks, like duck, they have like those hard like duck necks or duck feet. They're like kind of like dry. But again, this is why I'll make some recommendations, but it's always good to even access something like the platform because it's if I know the dog's history, I don't want to recommend things again, that make the situation worse because the gut is always something that I ask about before I make recommendations for those kind of things, the treats and the bones and things like that, because it can kind of, you know, it's just not always the best time to do stuff like that. If your animal's having no issues, those are things that you can fall, back on.
That's actually been a really fun win for me as I took my dogs off the raw meaty bones because I was doing that for their teeth because of the gut stuff. And they've
Hmm.
now been, so from July to now, they've been on the recipe learn from your platform. And I gave them raw meaty bones for Christmas and they were completely good. So that was an
Awesome.
amazing just win to see, that they used
Hmm.
to get acid reflux and stuff from giving them all of that stuff. Or you could just tell they were upset. And then, yeah, I did it for them for Christmas and they were good to go. So thank you.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was
You're
awesome.
welcome. I'm sorry. I think my aunt, can you get up for a second? I can see my animals got into a bag of treats because I can see the plastic on the floor that my dog is eating.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Okay.
she's like, okay, mom, we're done. Yeah.
Yeah. All
Well,
right. So
thank
there you
you.
go.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll get all your stuff linked below. People can find you
Perfect.
on Instagram at Detox. Are you mainly on Instagram at
I
Detoxify2Purify?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I have the Facebook account. My stuff from Instagram just basically, transfers right
Swaps
there.
over.
So it's the same thing. If people have one or the other, yes, I have both. That account is linked up. So the same, basically content, they'll be seen on both.
Awesome, awesome, amazing. Well, thank you so much for Danielle for coming on today, sharing your wisdom, telling us about Casey, and just helping shed a light on this whole diet situation and simplicity. So I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and wisdom and encouragement. And I think I said this off air, but just
Yes.
being a few steps ahead of all of us and like leading the way. It's very my dogs are my babies, and I've just been so
Hmm.
thankful to come across you and your account and be able to help my dogs in this way has truly been a gift. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for,
Thank you. I
yeah.
appreciate that. And thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome.